Hi, Susan.
Hi, Kevin.
We're here with Susan Pohlman, and she's a good friend of mine. I'm very proud to call her one of my friends. We've known each other for about 8 years now. Susan's the author of a best-selling memoir called Halfway to Each Other. So I'll just let you start telling us about this story. Let me interject, though. It's often compared to Under the Tuscan Sun. And I want to be on record in saying, I like your book better. I like both books, but what I really appreciate about your book, both are memoirs, but your memoir deals with much more important issues, like your family, marriage, children. So in addition, it has all those delicious things about Italy and the Amalfi Coast or wherever the heck you lived. So can you tell us a bit about your book?
Yes, sure. That'll be an easy thing to share with you. This book is called Halfway to Each Other, How a Year in Italy Brought Our Family Home. And it was an unexpected journey on many levels. The book is about the year that my husband and I decided to quite unexpectedly sign a lease on an apartment on the Italian Riviera near Genoa, just east of Genoa, in a small town called Nervi, rather than divorce papers, to be honest. We were at a crossroads in our marriage, and we're on a business trip and fell in love with the area and said, you know what, let's move here and get our act together. So it was a leap of faith. And the book is the story of that year. It was a very transformative year. And the interesting thing about writing this book is that I didn't know I was writing it as I was writing it, because it started as a series of emails, and I had a big group of friends in Los Angeles, some of them who thought that I was making a big mistake by selling everything and moving across the world with someone who I wasn't really even getting along with at the time. We had 2 kids, so there was a big decision. And I promised them that I would write to them and tell them how it was really going, and they swore that I needed to tell the truth. And what I did when I got over there was sit down whenever a moment came to me that I thought was special, and I would write it like a scene, because I had been studying screenwriting while living in LA, and so I knew how to write a tight scene, and I would write what happened in narrative form, in a nice scene, and send it out. And these emails started to garner a following, unbeknownst to me. And then one day, a friend who was a journalist in Washington, D.C., he wrote to me and he said, stop sending these chapters out because I think you have a book. And that's when I thought, well, maybe I do. And I never even considered it. I was just having fun and just writing with passion. And so I began to save all of those emails and continue writing, and came back a year later with a whole big stack of scenes that I had to decide, do I want to make a book out of this or not? So the rest is kind of history, obviously. I took that challenge and did that.
So in addition to the good effect it had on your personal life, because it healed your marriage, what about your professional life? What impact did it have on that?
Well, yes. I mean, the year saved our marriage, strengthened our family, and let us start over, which is what we needed. And then professionally, it turned me in a whole new direction. As I learned about publishing, really learned how to craft a narrative in a memoir, I fell in love even more with writing. So at the time, I was a middle school teacher, and also worked with you, Kevin, a couple of years in administration, and decided once the book really started to take off, I wanted to spend 100% of my time learning how to market a book, which is a whole nother story. and devote my life to writing. And so I did that. And so professionally, I'm on a whole new course, which has been wonderful.
There's a lot of envious people out there. So why don't you talk about this word that's so important, platform?
Your platform is really, it means how you're known in the community in which you live, and the greater community of the world, really. In publishing terms, you need to establish yourself as an expert in something. Okay, it doesn't matter what that is, but you need to have some sort of internet presence. So that, let's say you do have a book that you're shopping and you're sending it out to agents and editors. If they Google you, they need to land somewhere. And so your platform is what you have created to sell yourself and your book. It's very important and not to be taken lightly. At the end of the day, the publishing industry wants to sell books. You could have the greatest story on the planet and it may be written more beautifully than others, but if your platform is weak, you will be seen as a bigger risk. And so if you don't have a platform at this point, it's okay, just start working on one. There are a lot of free websites that you can build yourself a website, which is like a calling card now. Start a blog if you want. Get on Facebook, get on Twitter, and just kind of fool around with it and get comfortable with it. So there's a big, huge virtual discussion that goes on every day, and you want to be a part of that. It's a lot of fun, too, and you'll meet a lot of interesting people. I have all sorts of friends who I've never actually met face-to-face that I know worldwide because of working on my platform. And the other thing to remember is I didn't have a platform when I was published. And the hook of our story was so different that they decided to take a risk with me as a new author, with the hopes that I would really get to work and build a platform, which I did and have done and continue to do.
And you know, when your book came out, it might have been right on the cusp of like the old paradigm and the new paradigm. Because certainly now, if you don't build your own platform, no publisher is going to be interested in you. And, you know, you might have gotten on right at the time when someone could still just write a darn good book.
You're absolutely right. And when I signed my first contract, I didn't even have ebook rights in there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was right at the beginning of that whole explosion of Kindle, and the publishers, they weren't familiar with it either. And so we'd kind of grown together.
And that's just a few years ago.
That's just
Things changed so much.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of, you know, in the movie business, they say it doesn't matter who you know, it matters who knows you. I think that may be a similar thing.
Well, if you have an evergreen topic, people are always searching, and they're always seeking how to, like in my case, how do you make your marriage work? And how do you have a healthier family? And if you have a topic like that, you have no idea who's clicking on your blog or on your work. People are looking at your work, and they do want to hear what you have to say, and your story will find its audience with your help, and also just on its own.
Well, you know, this is a website for aspiring writers. So could you talk a little bit about how you became a writer, or why are you a writer? How'd you get started? And even the nitty-gritty of what kind of things did you do to go from not being a writer to actually being one? Like, how did you change your behavior?
That's about 20 questions in one. So let me start at the beginning.
Just pick the one that sounds best.
I think in the beginning, as a child, I was in love with stories. I read voraciously, like most writers will say. I was never without a book. And my family, I have 5 brothers, and they're all storytellers. So it was just part of who I was. I never really envisioned myself as a writer. And as I went into my professional life, I became a teacher and taught writing and taught literature and all of those things still in and around what I loved, which was storytelling. It wasn't until I moved to Los Angeles that I became interested enough to study the craft of storytelling. There's a big difference. And so I began to write as a hobby and study structure and imagery and just all of the literary elements. Again, just because I loved it, not because I thought I would ever write a book. And I did, however, start to try to sell screenplays, which is almost impossible. It's such a tough industry. But it taught me to write and to respect the craft of writing. I think the word writer, or even the term writing, is sometimes confusing because every human being can pick up a pen and write. But to become a writer means that you are choosing to devote a certain amount of your life to the craft and taking it seriously as a job, that you are being called to use your talent with words and storytelling to do an important job within whichever genre that you choose. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how to be a writer day to day, and that's what people struggle with. Okay, so depending on your level of dedication. So let's say you decide, okay, I'm going to be a writer. I'm doing it. I've been toying with this forever. Maybe you've been journaling, but you have to approach writing with great discipline. You find an office space. You write. You make a calendar. You show up every day, even if it's for 10 minutes. Everyone says they can't fit it in. I don't have time. I've got kids. All of those are real excuses, but they're not acceptable. If you want to be a part of the writing life, you have to make it work. So, for example, when I was writing Halfway to Each Other, I had a full-time job as an assistant principal. I had two children, one, a 8th grader and a high schooler. I was busy. And so I had to set my alarm for 4:30 every morning, and I got up and got a cup of coffee, and I wrote for an hour before the kids got up. That's what I did. And so it was 1 hour a day, but 1 hour a day adds up to 7 hours a week, and that's a lot of writing time. So you have to stop making excuses and do it. And there are certain things that you can do. You've got to read short stories, and you read like a writer. Stop reading like a reader. Take your pencil and start looking at structure, start looking at characterization, all of the dialogue, how things are layered. You've got to study writing. It's not magic. It's a hard-earned craft. The creativity part is fun, and that flow of creativity when you're writing, that is beautiful. But there is a point where that creative flow meets the marketplace. And if you want to cross over into the marketplace, you've got to study it, join writers groups, and treat it like a job.
Great advice, I think. It all resonates for me. And the question's real simple. It's about the part that your faith plays in your life as a writer.
Well, I mean, in writing memoir, you have to choose to be authentic on the page. And for me, I'm a Catholic Christian and grew up with a very strong faith. And so in that genre, it's important for me to present all of who I am. I don't write to preach or to present doctrine or any of that, but you can see Christian themes underneath what I'm saying. And my life journey does have Christianity is a big part of that. So in choosing to be a writer, when you have a Christian view of the world, you have a decision to make. Do you use those values in your writing or not? And I choose to use those values because I feel a call in my writing to do what I can to elevate the human experience on this planet. I think there are two kinds of books out there. You have books that elevate our journey as a human being and books that do not. And I like to be in the side of literature, so to speak, that provides hope, that teaches people to stop and ask them to look at their lives and and figure out how do I be a more loving person? What do I bring to the world to make it a better place? So that would be that would be basically how I see that. You know, it's important to take your faith, who you are, and let it shine on the page. And let me add one last thing. When we were shopping halfway to each other the very first time, I kept my faith journey out of the story, thinking that I was being politically correct to try to reach the broadest audience. And so what happened is that the story was not picked up. It was being shopped just as Eat, Pray, Love was hitting, you know, the world. And the fashion was, okay, let's all leave our husbands and travel around the world. And so my story was the opposite. So when it didn't sell first time around, I sat down and decided, because the editors all said to me, there's something missing on the page and we're not sure what it is. And I knew what it was. It was my faith journey part of the story. And so I went back and I layered the book with what that was for me and our family. And once I did that, it sold. And that taught me a really good lesson, that you have to have the courage to be who you are, all of you, on the page, and not worry about if you're being politically correct or who you're going to offend. You know, it's your life, your journey, your story, and it will resonate with the people who are searching for that. You know, so it gave me a lot more courage to go forth and write authentically.
Do you want to talk about your new book?
Sure.
It hasn't appeared yet, but it must be getting close.
You know what? It's in the process of editing, and I've been working on it for 2 years. It's called A Time to Seek. Now, that's just my working title. A publisher usually changes your title. But it is a sequel to the last book. It's a travel memoir, but it also can stand on its own, and it takes us back to Italy. This time we go to Florence, and through the journey of the book, it looks at what it means to be a woman midlife. It talks about transitional issues, both funny and not. It's a very meaningful look at midlife, and the book also seeks to teach people how to use travel as a tool for journey and transcendence. Because of my experience the first time around and how that changed me on the inside and in my relationships with others, you know, the power of journeying is important to me, and I want to share that with other people. So it shows you how to take a trip and turn it into a real inner journey. And in the process, we have fun and discuss issues about midlife. You know, who am I? Where am I going? And at this juncture of my life, what am I being called to do? And do I have the courage to change my life in order to do that? So, well, that's in a nutshell.
A last question that's related to that is, I think you're doing a number of other things besides just writing that are related to writing and that have grown out of your book. And I don't want to call them business opportunities, because I think it's more than that. It's more like a vocation that you're pursuing. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I do a number of things now, and you're right, it does come out of a love and a vocation and a calling. Because I was a teacher for so many years, I love to help educate others. So I now teach adult writers how to write, how to write short stories, or how to write memoir. And I've written curriculums for a couple of classes, mostly held in my own home, because I do love getting writers around a table. I mean, there's a magic that happens there. So that's one thing I do. The other thing I've started with a friend who's a travel writer, we've created a business that takes people on retreat to beautiful destinations, and we take our curriculum based on The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, and again, teach people how to use travel as a transformative tool. It's mostly geared to women, and only because the first time out, only women answered the call. So we have, every October, we go to Italy, back to where we lived. We rent a big villa on the sea and spend a beautiful week. And then in April, we go to Santa Fe. We'll be taking 18 people coming this April and every April. And we're adding destinations as we go. So it's been a really exciting, just new company, I guess. It's just a new calling to share this with others, and people are excited about it, and I'm excited to share that passion with them. It's been very rewarding.
Well, thank you. It's been great talking to you, and we're looking forward to your book, and I sure would love to take one of those retreats to Italy with you.
Well, come on, Kevin. What are you waiting for?
Okay. Well, thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Kevin.